This is the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast, episode number 6. Hello and welcome to the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast. I'm your host, Caryn McCann. The Christmas Movie Screenwriter is a podcast about writing, producing, and selling Christmas movies. I publish a transcript with every episode if you want to read something later. Just go to the website at www.christmasmoviescreenwriter.com. A quick few words about what I'm working on. I'm actually doing a script that could be my first DIY project. I've never tried to reach out to investors directly, so this is all a bit new to me. But I feel the location is not only a main character of the story, but that it has a verifiable audience as well. Today's guest is screenwriter Eirene Donohue. Now, just a note, this interview was recorded before the end of the writer's strike. Here is that interview. Eirene Donohue is a Vietnamese-Irish writer originally from Rhode Island. A graduate of Brown University, she spent years working and traveling in Asia, Africa, and New York before pursuing a career in screenwriting. Her first script was a semifinalist in the Nichols Fellowship, run by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences to identify emerging screenwriters. Since then, she has sold TV and feature projects to multiple outlets, including Lionsgate, ABC Studios, Freeform, Disney, Netflix, Lifetime, and Hallmark. Her film, A Sugar and Spice Holiday for Lifetime, was one of the first themed cable movies to feature a predominantly Asian cast. Her most recently produced projects include 12 Days of Christmas Eve, starring Kelsey Grammer, A Christmas Spark, starring Jane Seymour, and A Tourist's Guide to Love, starring Rachel Lee Cook. Set and shot in Vietnam and inspired by her own love story, it was the first American movie about Vietnam that wasn't about the war. Upon release, it was the #1 Netflix movie in the world. She currently resides in Los Angeles. Well, Eirene, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, why don't you take a minute and tell us about yourself and your work?
So like it said in the bio, I originally grew up in Rhode Island. I spent a lot of time traveling and always knew that I wanted to be a writer, always loved movies, worked in a video store in high school, but then sort of got sidetracked with life and traveling. And then, so I didn't actually pursue my screenwriting career until I was like 30. And at that point, I decided to write a screenplay, and I got some books on how to write a screenplay, and I wrote a screenplay. And I entered it into the Nichols Fellowship and made it to the semifinals. And that sort of gave me the confidence boost to pursue that career. Also, at that moment, my husband and I had decided we weren't really living the life we wanted to be living, so we sold everything we owned and spent the next year and a half living in our VW van, driving around the U.S. and Canada. And that was when I was making it through the Nichols. I was introduced to my manager, my agent. We started working together. So it was a pretty fortunate, quick, successful entry into the career, which I'm very grateful for, because I don't know that I would have been able to sustain through what I have seen is the very, very hard, real struggle of trying to break into this business. But then for the next few years, I sold some TV movies. I did some rewrites. I sold a couple TV pilots. I was just sort of doing the grind of being a working screenwriter, pitching on a million things, writing spec scripts, going to meetings, trying to connect with people, trying to sell things, getting a few things made here and there. And then, but the Christmas screenwriting actually happened. This was about, I guess it must have been like 5 years ago at this point, maybe. But or 4 years ago, I can't even, time means nothing now. So I've lost all track of time. Anyway, a few years ago, I had been on a very long dry streak and had not managed to sell anything for 2 years. And it's, I would get so close. So it would be between me and this other person, and then they'd go with this other person, or, that's just not right. Or it just every single time. And I'd written, probably 5 complete show pitches, 2 spec features, pitched on multiple
Wow.
open writing assignments, went up for staffing on tons of different shows, and it just wasn't happening. And then I read an article about, and we were broke. My husband and I, we had burned through the savings. My husband's a nurse, thankfully, so he had, a steady job. But we had a kid. I can't go back to bartending, which is what I did before I was a writer. And I remember reading a article about how they had made 100 Christmas movies that year between Netflix and Hallmark and Lifetime.
Yeah.
And I just said, oh, I need to get in on that. Because I love Christmas movies. It wasn't completely cynical. I watch a lot of Christmas movies. I love Christmas movies. I write romantic comedy. And I love Christmas. Just personally, I love Christmas as a holiday. Okay. So I told my reps that I was interested in writing a Christmas movie. And they reached out to an executive at Lifetime. I had written a teenage vampire movie for them called Drink, Slay, Love years ago.
Oh.
And so I had a connection with them, and we set up a meeting, and I went in and said, I would love to write a Christmas movie for you guys. And I gave them a couple different ideas, and one of them was a sugar and spice holiday. And so I sold the concept to them, and I wrote it for them. And in the next year, sold 3 more projects, 2 of which were also Christmas movies. Wow. So it just sort of became my thing that I write Christmas movies. It's one of the things I do. And I have a really great relationship with Lifetime. And
that's good.
And so hopefully there will be this year, because of the strike, there was not one, but hopefully that I wrote, but next year, hopefully there'll be another one with Lifetime. I've also recently started working with Hallmark, who I haven't written a Christmas movie for yet, but ideally would love to write one for them as well. And so that's sort of just how I ended up being. I write rom-coms, and I write I write indie comedies, I write other stuff as well. But being a Christmas movie writer has absolutely changed my life. It has given me a level of financial stability, because they make Christmas movies every year. They might only make one, with my Netflix movie, The Tourist Guide to Love. I don't know that someone is going to make another Vietnam set movie. Right. But everyone makes Christmas movies every year after year. So when I talk to emerging writers, I work at I mentor sometimes, and at different fellowships and retreats. And because I'm very business minded, because I want people to be a professional writer. It's not a hobby. People aren't, if it's a hobby, that's fine. But if you want it to be a profession, you have to think about the financials of it. You have to think about what the market is. You have to pay attention to what's selling, who's buying, and what your strengths are, what you can offer to that market. And so for me, if I write a Christmas movie a year, that covers my health insurance in the WGA. It covers, helps cover the rent. It keeps us, and then it gives me the freedom and the time and the space to write other projects, other non-Christmas projects. And also, I really enjoy it. Every year when they do air, when a Christmas movie airs, everyone I know, you post it on Facebook. All my friends from high school, they watch it with their mom, or my mom friends watch it with their kids, and my mom gets so proud. And it's just they are the type of thing that hits a wide audience and brings joy to people and entertains them. And so for me, I just love that aspect of it.
Well, you sort of answered my first question about how did you break into the industry and Christmas movie industry. But let me just touch on something you mentioned. You said 100 movies a year. Well, last year was 170.
Yes, I know. This was years ago.
And so that's, so it looks like it's growing, but do you think there's any chance it will get oversaturated with, people are going to okay, there's too many, or you think, okay, the demand is there? Because, a lot of people just watch a Christmas movie every day starting in November. That's 60 right there.
I know. I just got a residual check. So somebody was watching mine in July. So I was like, oh, literally, just this morning for a Christmas party. I was like, sweet. It's like a little surprise. You never know when you're going to get them.
That's cool.
And I think that it could get to be too much, but I think that the demand and the appetite for it is I think what will happen is that, and this wouldn't be great. Oh, it could be great or bad, but for me, is that people will watch the newer ones and not necessarily, because before you would just watch whatever old ones were on, so you'd be watching the ones from 10 years ago that Hallmark was playing or something older. And I think as the amount of content grows, that maybe it will shrink the sort of rewatching of certain movies. But I don't think that the appetite for Christmas movies is really going away. I feel like, especially I remember after COVID, it really had like this big boom because it's comforting, it's cozy, it's joyful, it's the type of entertainment that I think is having a resurgence, not just in Christmas movies, but across the board. If you look at some of the things that are popular and that are connecting with people, they're things that are slightly more positive, more focused on love and uplifting and joyful communities.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that leads to my next question. What specific elements are essential to include in a successful Christmas movie screenplay? And you sort of broke the rules with A Sugar and Spice Holiday. So can you speak to that?
Well, all Christmas movies, and I've been told this, basically directly from executives, there has to be a big amount of Christmas in it, in case people forget, because I have definitely read some scripts that people have sent me and I'm like, this doesn't have enough Christmas. And by Christmas, that's a fluid term, but because a lot of it can be put in through like set decoration or things like that. But there are those sort of specific tropes of sort of winter wonderland type things. They got to be drinking some hot chocolate. There's gift giving, decorating the tree, going sledding, ice skating, baking cookies, Christmas parties, Christmas caroling, snowman building. There's a million of those things that I don't think I need to tell people. I think people can go and identify what those trappings of Christmas are that are sort of just the details. It's sort of like the frosting, those types the frosting on the Christmas story. So that's that level of Christmas when I say it has to have a lot of Christmas. But there has to be also something within the story that is linked to Christmas. That the actual plot of the movie, whether it is there's the giant Christmas party coming up, or I have to find the perfect gift for this person, or I'm bringing my boyfriend home for Christmas for the first time. It has to be
organic,
something organic about setting it in the time frame of Christmas. And what else in terms of elements for me, for themes, the themes that I always work with and I feel like are usually pretty common, themes of love, family, community, giving, gift giving or charity, or and for me also a big one is faith, but I don't mean in a religious sense. I mean faith as in believing in something. You have to, oftentimes the character needs to learn how to believe again, whether or not it's believing in Santa or believing in magic or believing in love or believing in themselves. Just that feeling of belief and hope and magic. And I don't mean magic like necessarily twinkle twinkle spell casting magic, just magic as joy, magic as in like life is magical. That type of feeling I think are really important for a good and successful holiday movie.
Okay, well then how do you balance audience expectations and staying fresh and not being predictable and cliche?
What I try to do is, because there is an element of people want something familiar, but they want it fresh. That's familiar and fresh at the same time. That's always the goal. People have expectations when they are watching a Christmas or a holiday movie, and they want certain things to happen. And so you don't want to deviate too much from that, but you want to keep it interesting. And so for me, I try to balance the familiar, expected elements with unexpected twists. And so a lot of the times that can be done by, you have these universal themes, but you tell it through a specific experience. So for example, Sugar and Spice Holiday. That was the first Asian-centered holiday movie, cable movie ever. But the thing is, if you look at it, if you break it down, it is just a pretty formulaic Christmas movie. A big city woman goes back to her small New England hometown, falls in love with her high school crush, enters a gingerbread baking competition. That could have been the plot for anything. But what I did was, by centering it on an Asian family, you bring in a different perspective, a different view. And so they're eating with chopsticks and they're making jokes about stinky tofu, and there's a family altar, and it's very subtle. It's not about being Asian. It's just about the fact that Asian people also celebrate Christmas, and it normalizes that experience, and it gives a level of representation that hasn't been there before for Asian people, but it also gives a look into an Asian family for people who are not Asian, and you don't have to be Asian to enjoy it. It's just a Christmas movie. It is, but it's things like that. Or with A Christmas Spark is about a widow who, goes to visit her daughter and then falls in love, and she directs the town play. And then that also came out of what's the typical storyline? How can I find a new entry point and make it an older woman? Which that had not really been done very often. The protagonists are always younger, and you get these beautiful older women who play their mom. Yeah. In all the regular movies. And I was like, what if she's the protagonist? What if we, and because that's a huge demographic of these movies as well, is women that age or older women. Yeah. And so to be able to, and I mean, admittedly, Jane Seymour is Stone Cold Fox, so it helps that she is just stunningly like sparkly, magical, leading woman. But so I would say, look at all the pieces, I mean, there is a recipe for it, but it's like, there can be a recipe for plain chocolate chip cookies, or you can make them gourmet, or you can make them gluten-free, or you can make, it's like, right. There's different, you can use this or that. You like it crunchier, you like it chewier. You take it's all the same basic ingredients, but you add some, you change up your technique. You still want to give something delicious, but there's lots of different ways to get there using, when you're all baking the same thing, because we're all sort of baking the same gingerbread. Right.
Well, I really hope we see more of those older women as the protagonists. I think that's an underserved market, but then I digress. Now, after you finish the script and it's ready to go, what's your next step? How do you move it towards getting into production?
So I actually am in a very fortunate position, mostly that I sell directly to the networks. So it really has nothing to do with me. I send it and we do rewrite, I sell them. The process is usually, well, there's different processes, but if I sell a pitch, it means that I have worked out the storyline and the characters and the themes in a sort of verbal, written presentation. And for Christmas movies, usually it's about 3 pages long. It's not as detailed. For the Netflix movie, Tourist Guide to Love, which I sold as a pitch, was a much longer, much more detailed, like probably 12, 13 pages of the entire story, every story beat sort of worked out. But for the Christmas movies, for me at least, probably also because I have established relationships with people, it's like a 3-page short outline of the main story beats, the characters, and I present the pitch to when I work at Lifetime, or with Sugar and Spice, if you're selling a pitch, you go in, you tell them your pitch, and then they buy it, and hopefully, and then you write and then you do a full outline, and then you do a first draft. And then after that, it depends on your contract. I typically have multiple drafts in my contract to get a second draft, third draft polished, things like that. The other ways in which you can sell a Christmas movie, you can sell, now with Lifetime, I will just sell them a concept, and I don't necessarily have to pitch. But other projects have been sold. I worked with different producers. Sometimes I have a relationship with the producer, or I have a meeting with the producer, and we're like, let's work on something. I give them an idea. I write up the pitch. They take it to multiple, and then the producer takes it to multiple outlets and tries to sell the pitch with themselves attached. And then it's the same thing. You write the outline, you write, the script. Another way is to sell the actual script, to have a spec script that's been completed and written. And usually same thing, in that case, I'm working with a producer usually, or we will then take the script to a producer that I've had a relationship with, or that my reps know are looking for a script, and go with that producer. And then they take the producers are the ones that sort of take it out. I am not the one that sells it. It's always the producer.
So does your manager introduce you to those producers, or you have a short list? I know you have relationships, but
originally, yes. Originally, it was definitely my reps introduced, my agent, my manager when you're a screenwriter, there are these things called generals, where your reps get you a meeting with just this producer, that executive, this development person, or director, or whoever, excuse me. And you just have a meeting. It's like a first date, sort of. You're just like, oh, who are you? Tell me about yourself. You tell me your life story. You tell me what you like, what you try to write. They've hopefully usually read a sample of your work, so they know what your sort of style or your skills are. And then sometimes they'll be like, well, we're looking for this type of movie. Do you have any ideas? And you're like, oh, well, and you maybe throw off a couple ideas, or you're like, you know what, I'll get back to you. How about, so then after the meeting, you go through your log lines, you come up with a couple of log lines, and you're like, here are a couple of ideas that I have that might work for you. Let me know if you're interested in talking more. And it's great sometimes if they like an idea, and then you just start talking to them about it, and then you start developing it, and then you write up a shorter pitch of it, and back and forth. And then ideally they then decide to work with you on that project. Or what can happen is that nothing comes of it, but then maybe like a year later, or they might even be working at a different, production company or a different studio down the road. You never know. Those general meetings, even if they don't lead to anything directly, immediately, will often lead to things down the road. So those are really an important part of being a working screenwriter, I always tell people, take as many general meetings as you can, because you don't know what's going to come of it. Some of the thread between different projects in my career that failed or didn't do this, but then led to that. And then, I can trace it, even writing, the fact that I'm writing Christmas movies, literally I can trace back through the very first feature pitch that I sold to Lionsgate, because the producer there, and I pitched with him on a project at Lifetime, and that I didn't get that job, but then they hired me to do the vampire one, and then I did that, and then years later did the Christmas movie. So you just never know. Those relationships are really important. So definitely put yourself out there.
Two things about that. One is, when you're in a general meeting, yes, it's not a quote unquote, you're not selling a particular project. It's more of a meet and greet. But then, are you trying to pitch your projects during those meetings?
It depends. It honestly, it depends on who the meeting is with. And because sometimes I'm just meeting with, I know who they are and what they've done, sort of, and my reps usually can tell me what they're looking for. And so I usually will have an idea or two that I think might work for them, that they might be interested in, that I will just mention and say, oh, you're looking for that. And sometimes it's off the top of my head, because they'll say, oh, we're actually looking for this type of movie set here. Do you have any ideas for that? And yeah, I have this one. But usually I'll say, I'm not sure about, let me go through because I have an idea list that I've been keeping for, 15 years. So I say, let me go through my idea list and see if there's any of my concepts that would work for you. And that gives you an excuse to contact them afterwards and email them, and to further that relationship. Always send an email after the meeting saying, thanks for meeting me. So great. Hope we connect in the future. Something, try to reference something you talked about, or an inside joke or something, so that it's not just a meeting and then it disappears. You have that person's email. You had connected. If for whatever reason they come back around and you have an idea that would work for them, you can always reach out later and be like, hey, I've got this new script. If you're interested, let me know. So yeah, so those general meetings are, and especially for, I mean, because like I said, all of these meetings are set up by my reps, and I had a very fortunate quick entry into this business. But I know for most people, you're trying to get people to read your script. You're trying to get you're just trying to get a manager. You're trying to do all of those things. And everyone has a different story of how they got their manager, how they sold their first project. So I can't, like, people always ask me, like, how did you, I'm like, I don't know. But I would say that relationships are really important. And so put yourself out there, make the connections when you can, follow up on those connections, check in with those people, research them, know what they are interested in. If you're pitching a rom-com to a horror producer, that's sort of, you don't want to be wasting their time, sort of thing. And yeah, so that's sort of some of the advice I would have.
Okay. A follow-up to that, but that leads into my next question. My follow-up to what you said was, you've got an idea list and you want to say, you don't want to lose those connections. So are you going back like every 6 months to your producer connections and saying, hey, I've got this new script? Or is it more like this one producer I'm going to tell my idea?
It's all over the place. I have, multiple projects right now that I've been working on with multiple producers, and I connected with those producers in all different ways. Sometimes through my rep, sometimes through another project I'd done, sometimes through a friend, sometimes through, and so sometimes there are certain ideas that I think, and I talk to my reps about it, and I say, hey, who would be good for this? Who do we think would be a good fit for this, in terms of what the project is, what the relationship we have with them, what their relationship is with a certain studio or whoever. And so sometimes it's tailored for, like, oh, well, let's reach out to them. But oftentimes it's just, I had a general meeting, we clicked, what ideas do you have? I came with an idea. So now I'm going to take that project out with that person. But then moving forward from that, if it doesn't work, or if it does, then yeah, maybe I'll check. It depends on the relationship that I have with them, but I'll check in every once in a while with them, being like, hey, or they'll check in with me. They'll say, are you working on anything? Or, hey, I hear Hallmark's looking for this type of movie. Or, reaching out and being like, you were recommended by this person, I want to adapt this book. Things like that. So it goes back and forth. Sometimes it's me reaching out to them. Sometimes it's them reaching out to me. Sometimes it's just my reps, having a lunch with this producer and being like, you would be perfect to meet with them. There's lots of, it's not a set in stone type of business. It's very fluid.
All right. Well, let's if some of the audience is like new to this genre and want to break in, how would you suggest screenwriters expand their network of producers? Would you suggest film markets or film festivals, and if so, which ones? Competitions, or utilizing online platforms?
Let's see. I would say, first of all, if you're trying to break in, then you definitely have to have the script written. No one's going to buy a pitch from an unrepped, unproduced writer. So definitely have the script written. Make sure that it is the best it could possibly be, because when you make connections, that's great. And if you have that connection, you want to use it, but you do not want to blow your shot. You do, like, most people will read you once, people, this friend of mine, my friend's cousin, wants to be a screenwriter. Will you read it? I'm like, okay. But I'm not going to be reading multiple drafts. I'm not going to be, doing things like that. So if your next door neighbor's uncle is, this huge producer, and you've just written the first draft of your first script and you're really excited about it, don't send it to them. Don't, because you're going to waste that. And they're going to be like, this is not good. And I'm not interested. So I would say what you do is, so make sure, and the way to do that, I think, is by joining writing groups, if finding local writing groups or online. There are lots of different writing groups that, people will post, like, I'm looking for writing buddy or writing or some feedback, things like that. My favorite one is, there's a podcast, the Screenwriters podcast with Lauren McKenna and Meg LaFauve, and it's probably just the best screenwriting podcast, or one of the best out there. And they interviewed me. They can go listen to I did an interview with them on Christmas movies as well. But they talk to some of Oscar winners, like big, Meg isn't, she wrote Inside Out. So it's a super supportive, wonderful podcast. And there's so much information on it.
Right.
And you can learn so much from listening to different screenwriters. And sometimes they do go into the craft of it. It's not just interviewing screenwriters. It's also, they do podcasts about actual craft.
Right.
And advice and things like that. But they have a Facebook page. And in that Facebook page, it's a very supportive community. And I often see people saying, hey, can someone read this for me? Is anyone interested in trading reads? So you're in a safe space with other people who are trying to do the same things that you're doing. And another Facebook group that I love is Writing for Holiday Movies. So if you're specifically looking to Christmas movies, I'm pretty sure, Writing for Holiday Movies, I think is what it's called. It's a Facebook group. And it's all focused on writing holiday movies. So,
I love that.
Some people offer courses. There are people in there who they've written some books on how to write Christmas movies. There are people just trying to break in. There are people looking for advice. There are people looking for writing groups. There are all of those, everything sort of related to Christmas movie or holiday movie writing. So that's another great resource. There are contests you can enter, and some of them are better than others in terms of what you can get out of it. But one thing that everyone can get out of it usually is a read by an objective party and feedback on where your script actually is at. Because you might think it's wonderful and maybe your partner thinks it's great or anything, but to have an objective read on it, to be like, ooh, this needs more work, or they cost money, but it's like getting notes, you're getting feedback. I would also say, if you can afford it, and there are affordable ones out there, hire a script consultant. I did that for my first script. I did not know anything besides what I'd read in How to Write a Screenplay and, reading screenplays. And this is when I was living in Rhode Island, and I hired this woman to, basically give me notes, and she sort of ripped it apart, and then I put it back together again. And then she helped me, rip it apart again and then put it back together. And that was the one that got me my manager, my agent, got me into the Nickel Fellowship. It was invaluable, the advice so early on, instead of me just sort of trying to figure it out, and this works and that works, and I don't know if it's any good. Like, I don't know. And she was like, you need to do this, this, and this. Your characters have these, all of just the feedback on it. And so that got it to a level that I wouldn't have been able to get it to on my own.
Right.
And again, it's professional, objective feedback. And also because you're paying them, you're more likely to do the rewrite, because saying, oh, I'll get around to it, or I don't need to implement this, or things like that. So I would say get your script as good as it can possibly be. In terms of expanding your network of producers, yes, I think if you can get into these fellowships, you get into I work with the Cinestory Foundation Fellowship, and we do a retreat. There's a feature retreat, there's a TV retreat. There, if you win, it's $10,000 and a year of mentorship. But you go to this retreat, you meet all these mentors, you work with different writers and producers and directors and managers come. And so things like that can be good for networking. Also, you can, if you're looking for producers, I would say watch a bunch of Christmas movies.
Right.
See who the producer is, see what the production company is, see who the producer is, see if you can get their email information, send them a query of saying, I have this script, here is the concept. If you would be interested in reading it, please let me know. I would be happy to send it to you. Things like that. You have to you got to hustle a lot of the time to expand that on your own. And any other connections you have. Like I said, friend's cousin.
Right.
Dog walker's uncle. That was how I met some people early on. It was just friends of friends of friends. Passing your name along. So, that's how I would do that.
On a follow-up on that, for the Fellowship for Cinestory, there's the film retreat and the TV retreat. Does the TV include TV movies?
No, that is for like TV shows. So it's a feature. A TV movie still counts as a feature. It's it's a feature film. as opposed to a TV show. You're pitching a TV pilot script, so
okay.
and the whole show. So it's a different skill set.
Okay, so for a TV movie, you would apply for the feature film.
Yes.
Sinister.
Yeah, because also you don't know if it's going to be a TV movie or a feature. That's still,
true,
when you write these scripts, you don't know what it could be either. A TV movie is just a movie that is shown on TV. And then there's, and you write within the conventions and to the audience of whatever your market is. So a Lifetime movie it has a smaller budget than a theatrical release, but Christmas movies have the same, like I said, it's going to have bigger stars, it's going to have bigger budgets, but at its heart, they're sort of the same stories. They're the same world. So you're just writing a feature, and then whoever you sell it to, then you like, oh, well, I have to tone it down a little bit, or I have to, cut the budget. I think like when you're writing for Lifetime or Hallmark, those are where the changes get made.
Okay. Are there any film markets that you would suggest, or you think just perhaps, the online stuff, the Facebook groups and, research?
I think because a lot of these contests and fellowships and stuff, they're great. They cost a lot of money a lot of the times, entry fees, things like that. I will say that if you do, besides the validation that you can get from doing well in a contest, the other thing is that it validates you in the eyes of other people. So let's say you are going to have your cousin ask their dog walker to read your script. If you can say, oh, by the way, my friend's script was a semifinalist in Page or in the Nickel, then the other person is more likely to read it. So it's worth that level of value because it gives you a little bit more legitimacy in the eyes of an objective reader who probably does not want to read it, but is like, okay, at least I know it's not going to be horrible.
Right.
I know that it's got some skill level to it. So I would say those, same thing with the retreats and residencies, those are also expensive. So online groups, and also I know a lot of these people trying to break in don't live in LA.
Right.
You don't live in LA, you don't live in New York. And so it's hard to sort of travel in person to a lot of these things. Online seminars, online workshops, those are great places to find other people. I know in writing for holiday movies, every once in a while, one of the professional writers in there will say, I'm running a workshop on how to write a Christmas movie. And then that can, connect you to more people, that can teach you, that can give you feedback. And the Blacklist is another online resource where you can sort of like pay for hosting and pay for reads. But again, it gives you that validation. I don't know that anyone is going to buy it off of there, or maybe people get repped off of there, but at least you can use that when you send a query to a manager and agent, say, this script got an 8 out of 10 rating from 6 readers when it was on the Blacklist. Those are the things that you can do to sort of up your profile with the people you're trying to connect with.
What about like markets? What I mean by that is like the AFM, American Film Market, or MIPCOM, or do you suggest that?
I don't have any experience with that, so
good.
Yeah. I can't do that either way. I can't comment on that because I have no experience with any of those things.
Oh wow, you are the exception, because that's usually a lot of people are trudging around the AFM. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, like I said, I was very fortunate, and my reps and producers. I write and I go to the meetings, I pitch, I go to the meetings, I do all the interpersonal stuff in the writing, but the business side of it, I don't know. I don't have any connection to it. And when you are a professional screenwriter, you have no power. You have no control. You hand in your final draft to the executives, and sometimes you don't hear anything back until they tell you when the air date is. I don't have a say in who directs it, who stars in it, it depends on your relationship with the producer, because there are producers that I am in much more solid contact with, and and I'll go visit the set sometimes. But there are also movies that I have written where I was never contacted by the director, by the star, by the producer. I sell directly to the network, so then they can assign. They'll just assign it to someone else, and I don't know what's happening with it, So sometimes it comes up, and you're watching it, and you're like, oh, okay, that scene. Oh, they cut that scene. They did this. Oh, is that how you don't? you don't know. So the business side of it, I have never had to. I mean, a lot of my friends have been more involved on the business side, or a lot of people, trying to get their independent features financed and produced, or they'll produce their own shorts, or try to attach people on their own. But usually for me, I'm working with either a producer or with my reps or with an executive who they handle that whole side.
Okay. At the time of this recording, we're in the middle of a writer's strike, writers and actors strike, and AI is a big issue. Do you think AI will change the way Christmas movies are written or made? And if so, how?
I think if we don't get the protections that we want out of this strike, then yes. That is one of the things we are striking for and fighting for, is protections from the use of AI by studios and networks in order to take work away from us, and also to take our work without our consent and without compensation and use it to create AI generated movies. And the thing is that right now, the way that the contract is written, technically a movie does have to be written by a person.
Okay.
But what could happen, because you can't copyright AI, and it's already in the agreement that it has to be written, the credit has to be given to an actual person in order to fulfill the contract. But what they could do, and what we know they totally would do, is use AI to create an outline or a first draft, and then they would hire someone for the basic minimum to polish it,
right,
to make sure that everything works around, give it a little bit extra edge, a little extra humor, and to get around the loophole that it has to be written by a person. But you can't make a career out of that. You can't make a living off of the
rewrite
scale minimum of a polish once a year. That's like $10,000,
wow.
before commissions and taxes. I mean, and so that, I think it's what they would do if they could. And I do think that Christmas movies specifically are susceptible to the dangers of AI,
yes,
because it is formulaic. Yes. It is a recipe. And there are so many of them that they could use all of that content,
right,
to have, because it's one thing to, how do you have AI write a Coen Brothers movie? First of all, it's super individual and quirky, but second of all, there are only so many of them that they can use as a basis of generating new stuff. But there are there's so many Christmas movies,
right,
and it does follow a very sort of, like I said, there's certain ingredients. So if you feed all that in, it's going to shoot out a generic Christmas movie script that could be passable at a certain point. Maybe not right now, but the way that it exponentially improves itself means that they could probably come up with, just like I said, because people's expectation levels or the formula aspect of a Christmas movie makes it easier to copy.
Yes.
And that's scary. And I also think it's detrimental. It's not going to be as original. It's not going to be as interesting. It's not going to have those fresh, surprising quirks, because those things come from surprises. They come from individual experiences. They come from the lived experience of the writers, and putting in unique voices. Or, I also think it would be probably not very beneficial for diversity in terms of representation and the types of characters that would be written, or the types of storylines, or the types of world that it would be set in.
Wow.
And that because it's not being sort of organically created, and it'll fall even more into stereotypes and even more into tropes, and people will be like, oh, Christmas movies suck, because they're all the same. And you don't want that. You want it to be, like I said, familiar and fresh. And I think that without the human writer aspect of it, then it's just going to be very stale.
Well, let's hope the writers hold the line, because this is the existential threat. Existential threat.
The line. We are very united and very committed to the cause. We've been out here for 4 months, and
wow.
We're not going anywhere until we get what we want. At this point, I want to be like, no, we want it all. We're not even negotiating. You put us through 4 months of pain. Like, this was our offer, and we thought we would counter, and and then you find the middle ground. And now I just want to be like, no, have to give us and actually now I want more.
Yeah.
I want more. I think we should expand our demands. Because like for 4 months you have wrecked this entire town and put people out of work and out of business, and not just writers. I mean, it's everything, because production is shut down. And so all the costumers, all the set decorators, all the cameramen, all the marketing people, the caterers, and then the outside services that then support those people, restaurants, because people can't afford to go out to eat. People are cutting, they can't afford to go to therapy. They can't afford, there's so many.
Wow. A knockdown effect.
The reverberations of their unwillingness to create a fair contract with us are felt beyond just writers. And so that is where it gets really frustrating, is that you can see that they're just being really greedy.
Right. Well, this is the time.
And then they're talking about, and it's not about these, there's very few writers that are, these rich millionaire that can just survive everything. Like most writers are, even if you're a professional writer and you're in the guild, you're working, you're grinding, you're paycheck to paycheck. You can get a big project, and then, like I said, for 2 years, you don't sell anything.
Right.
Like it can seem like a big deal at first for people, like, oh, well, they sold this, or you think that they're more successful than they are, but then or that they're getting paid so much money, because like for one script, it's that much money. Oh my God, what are they complaining about? And it's like, well, you have to live off of that. First, you're cutting commissions to everyone, and then you have to live off of that. For however long it takes, because sometimes they drag the job out, and they don't get back to you for 2 months, and then this happened, and you thought you could rely on this paycheck in the next 6 months, and then suddenly it's another year before you get paid. Or
the paycheck is late.
Yeah, all of those things. Yes, that's what's going on with the strike.
Okay,
we're in it for the long haul.
Good. More power to you. So, what is your favorite script that you've written, and why?
Let's see. I think of the ones that I've written and gotten produced, it's hard. It's definitely between Tourist Guide to Love and Sugar and Spice Holiday. Those of the Christmas movies, I would say, well, clearly Sugar and Spice Holiday. I'll keep it to the Christmas movies. My favorite favorite Christmas script that I've written is A Sugar and Spice Holiday. It was my first Christmas movie that I wrote, and I loved being able to. The characters are very much inspired by my own friends and family, and the grandmother and the mother are both inspired by my mom, who's like the cutest little Vietnamese woman, and we actually call her Nema, which is what the grandmother's grandmother's character call her Nema. Like I always put so many Easter eggs in my movies. Like everyone is named after someone I know. Everything is. The neighborhoods, where I'm from in Rhode Island, I used all of these sort of like local references to this neighborhood is, like the snobby town is Rumstick Point, which is sort of like the snobby, the richer neighborhood in my town, things like that.
Okay. Good.
So it was just really fun for me for the first time, I didn't feel like I was covering, whereas as I move forward and write more and more Christmas movies, it's more challenging to try to keep yourself fresh and to not necessarily use the same story points or characters that you've used in the past. So for that one, it was just really fun. The idea of writing this fun Christmas movie and being able to put in some of those details about Asian families or Asian life.
Good.
Yeah. And it was just, it was, and also because that was the first sale that I made after, it was the first after I had the dry spell. So it was just like, oh my God, I sold the script. And I was so happy to be working and getting paid. And
I bet.
Yeah. So that I think it was so well done. The director, she's amazing. And the cast, everyone was, it was during COVID. It was during like hardcore lockdown. They filmed it in Vancouver. So I couldn't go up and visit. It was just a really great experience. And the reaction that I had from people, the feedback that I've had from people, not just Christmas movie fans, but very specifically within the Asian community, that was really wonderful. So many people reached out and were like, I've never seen myself represented on screen that way.
Neat.
And it was so great. I love this part. I love that part. I love the way you did these things. So that to me was really just wonderful to be like, I did that. I did that for you. And to want to keep doing things like that, to sort of combine that enjoyment factor with representation or with just trying to keep the genre fresh.
Yeah. Well, that's how I discovered you, was because that movie, A Sugar and Spice Holiday, really made the news. And that's how I found you. And I'm like, wow, this girl, you go, girl, because, I'm a big fan of, diversity and having, especially, because I used to live in Asia, having more Asians in Hollywood. And I think, wow, I think it's a gold mine, personally, a gold mine genre. So.
Yeah, it was one. And that's another reason why I love the whole Christmas movie genre, and that I tell emerging writers to write a Christmas movie is because they need so much content, and because they are trying to reach a wider audience. Diversity is actually, it used to be so whitewashed and so just, middle America, Christian, white people movies. But in the past few years, it has absolutely shifted. I mean, there's been multiple other Asian-centered Christmas movies, holiday movies since then. Hallmark has especially made Lifetime was always a little bit more diverse than Hallmark, but there was a change in leadership a few years ago, and they very actively started pursuing diverse voices. Good. And not just, ethnically, class-wise, LGBTQ, things like that, all the different storylines, because they understand the audiences want to see that. They don't want to see the same exact thing over and over and over again. And honestly, still 80-90% of the programming is still that same. But now at least there is, every year, and then that builds the sort of canon. It builds the, every year that there's another Asian movie, that means that instead of just being mine, there's like 2, and then the next year there's 3, and there's 4 or 5, so it just keeps expanding. And so, definitely, if you have a personal connection, especially for scripts, for newer writers, when you're trying to sell yourself and sell your scripts, if your script can some way be connected directly to your personal experience, that is a super big selling point. If you're like, I worked at a zoo, or I lived in Asia, and this was it's about your first Christmas in Asia as a foreigner, or whatever, or my mother did this, or my father was a professional Santa, whatever, you can actually authentically connect your personal story to what your script and story is. People value that, and it also gives them a little bit of safety, because it's like, oh, this isn't some crazy fantastical thing. If someone criticizes us, it's like, no, this is their experience. Like, they actually did grow up on a circus, or the writer, and so and that's a way to get fresh storylines in there. They're looking for something. They want familiar but different. They say they want something different, but they really want something different that's kind of the same.
Right. The same but different.
Same but different.
Exactly.
So I would say lean into your personal experience especially for your first script.
Exactly. Now, getting a movie made can be stressful, as we all know, as you well know. How do you maintain a work-life balance, and do you have any hobbies?
My work-life balance is all over the place. It's, as a writer and a mom and the wife of a nurse who works 12-and-a-half-hour shifts, I have to be flexible. I write when I can. I learned how to write in whatever situation, whatever environment, coffee shops, my minivan, libraries, my laundry room is my office. Being a Hollywood screenwriter is not glamorous at all. I work in my laundry room. And so that, but then also I'm forced to sort of have the balance of life, because when my husband is working and I'm taking care of our daughter, then I can't be writing. I can't be doing any of that stuff. So I'm in life. And then as she's gotten older, and she's in school, it does free up more time to, I have a lot of friends. I'm very people person. So we go for walks together, or I try to go see movies more now. I go on and off with that, but just trying to watch what's out there. So that's my way sometimes of being like, it's work, but it's not really work. but it is technically work. I have to watch this movie. I have to read this book. Everything is research too. Everything counts as research. Because you never know where you're going to pull that story from. So I travel a lot. We travel to see family. My husband's from Canada. I'm from Rhode Island. I'm the youngest of 6. I'm the youngest of 7. Mm-hmm. So I have family all over the place. So we go camping. I go to the beach. I write songs. I just started recently writing songs I'd always written song lyrics, and I was never really a singer or musician, but a couple of years ago started focusing on it more and being like, oh, I want to maybe do this. And so worked with a couple people on songs that never really got released, but then started taking voice lessons last year. And decided to record a single. And so I recorded a song. It's called The River Flows Anyway, and it's on Spotify and Apple Music and all the other things too. But it was such an amazing experience. It was so much fun. It was such a different level of creativity and just expression that is very different than, so much more immediate than writing a screenplay, and then you send it in, it doesn't get made, and no one ever sees it. You wrote a screenplay, or it does get made, but it's different. It takes 2 years, and it's very different than what you had, because by then the director, the actor, all of the things. So for me, just writing a song and recording it and then releasing it so that people can hear it is really has been fun. So I do that. That's sort of a release for me, is writing songs. And that's been bringing me, a lot of joy recently. And so those are, that's how I just try to, I'm very, very sort of, I guess, woo-woo, pagan, hippie. I believe in positivity and joy. I got the crystals. I try to manifest. I believe that you can manifest things. I put that energy, put good energy into the universe. I hope that it comes back to me. And in the meantime, at least I'm living in a place of joy. I expect good things to happen to me, and I can deal with what goes wrong. Instead of expecting everything to go wrong and then only getting these like small moments of being, at a higher level. So it's hard. It's very hard. Writing is very hard. And it's, your brain never turns off, and you always feel like you should be doing more. And there's always another rewrite, and everyone always has their opinions, and everyone's going to tell you this. You could just get notes and notes and notes and notes and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. And at a certain point, you just have to let it go, and you just sort of release it out there. I will go away. I'll like rent a cabin or go to a friend's house or sort of lock myself away, and I can write a whole script in like a week.
Wow.
Or less. I've done it in 5 days. Because if I have an outline, then I'll just get up and I write from 9 till 9, and then, maybe watch some TV, go to bed, and then get up the next day, and there's nothing else distracting me. So I can just focus completely on the script. And I know that I only have that amount of time really to get it done. So that can be helpful for people who have a hard time balancing between those two things. If you can get away for a couple days, go lock yourself away and do a writing sprint and just sort of vomit it all out. And then you can rewrite it. It's easier. I can rewrite easier sort of in and out of my life and at home. But the actual, the first draft, if I can get away, at least for the first couple, if I can get the first act written, in like 2 or 3 days, it's like, once I get the first act for me is always sort of the hardest. You're really like building everything. You're putting all the pieces together. And then once that sort of gets rolling, it's easier for me to just come in and out of that world, because I've already sort of built the world. But that first act, if I can go away for 3 days somewhere and just lock the door, then that is how I create that balance.
I like that idea. Good. So what advice would you give to your younger self?
I was thinking, when you sent me this question, I was like, what advice would I give? And there's sort of two, and the first leads into the second one. And the first one would be invest in real estate.
Okay.
I wish I could go back. Man, if I could go back and invest in real estate when I was younger, and to have that type of financial asset, and it would be incredible, because if you can create, and not like real estate, but like if you can at some point before you embark on this career or while you're doing it, create some level of passive income or another source of income that is not a full-time job, but that is, but can keep you floating in the very long, hard, dry patches, that would be amazing. Because when I, through the years going, before I did this. I was a bartender. I taught English in Japan. I was a nanny, a tutor. I did freelance writer. I did all of those odd jobs. I temped on Wall Street, all of those things. And a lot of those jobs they're great for like the short term, but they can be hard sometimes because while you're doing some of these jobs, you don't really have time to write, or it's not enough.
Yes.
We're working so much that you never have the ability to get your own work done. And so if I could have, I don't know, created some sort of website or a servicing that I didn't have to, or that I was more of a side hustle, but that could come in handy when you're financially strapped. Luckily when I have had dry patches or things, like I said, my husband he's a nurse, so he has a regular job with a steady paycheck that doesn't quite keep us floating, but but mostly, Okay. And so so I was if you can invest in real estate,
that is a great answer.
When you're young, whatever you can do, just invest in real estate, get a rental property, and then you can just have that gaining value and renting it out and giving you some sort of income outside of writing. And that leads sort of to the second part of that strategy and just life strategy, is that just know that you are going to be in this for the long haul, or be in it for the long haul. Be prepared to be in it for the long haul. It is not a overnight success, I'm suddenly a millionaire, I can do whatever I want type of business. Maybe that happens to some people, but even those people, if you're like in 5 years, you're like, where are they now? Like it's ups and downs. It's hits and misses. It's building and building connections, networks. It's stepping up that ladder and sometimes falling down and then having to climb up again. And it's also not the type of career that has an end date, that has an expiration date. You can write a script at 70, and if it's a good enough script, someone can buy it from you. Like you, at any point in your life, if you are still writing and still pursuing it and still going after it, or you could start, you just retired, you're an empty nester or whatever, like, I've always wanted to write a screenplay. You can write a screenplay. There's no I can see how that with actors or certain careers, it's like, I got to do this now. I got to get in young and all of those things. Yes. If I'm not a success by the time I'm 30, then forget it. If anything, the more life experience you have, the more interesting your script is going to be. And the more material you have to bring to the world as a writer. And so just be prepared for the fact that you stick with it. You have to be persistent. You have to not let rejection get to you. It's not personal a lot of the times. Just, okay, keep going, keep writing, keep rewriting, keep writing, keep rewriting, new scripts, new ideas, keep living also. Make sure you live an interesting life. Because like I said, if you're not living an interesting life, then then that's when it becomes generic and reductive, because you're writing because of the other Christmas movies you've watched and not because of your own interesting lived experiences or your friend's experience or something you saw. That is the material. So make sure you live an interesting life. And just go for it.
You have a great attitude. A great attitude. Now, would you like to wrap up? Would you like to share any social media details so our audience knows how to keep track of your work?
You can follow me on Instagram at Eirene Donohue.
Is that just spelled? Is there any hyphens or?
No, it's just one word, Eirene Donohue.
Okay, great. Well, Eirene, this has been excellent. Thank you so much for your very candid answers and very insightful tips and techniques. And so thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation, and I hope that people find this helpful.
Someday I have.
Someday I'll be watching their Christmas movies on Lifetime and Hallmark and Netflix and everywhere else.
Excellent. And we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. And now for my takeaways. Today I have 4. Number 1, writers groups. You will only get one read, so get your script vetted before you send it out. An easy way to do this is to join a writers group and swap scripts. Eirene talked about how she hired a script consultant on her first script, and it ended up as a semifinalist in the Nickel Fellowship, which then led to her getting representation. So it's always a good idea to get an objective opinion on your script. You can check out writers groups on Facebook, for example, and there's one called Writing for Holiday Movies. You can see the link in my show notes. Number 2, personal experience. Christmas movies tend to be formulaic. I think we all agree on that. But how do you stand out? One way to give your script a fresh point of view is to use your own personal experience. We've heard producers say they want the same but different. Your experience is unlike anyone else's. I do this with my own scripts. Having lived and worked in Hong Kong, I try to incorporate an Asian element, either characters or plot points, in my scripts. Number 3, passive income. Being between writing gigs is part of the screenwriter's job description. You can do yourself a big favor by thinking about creating some passive income. Now, buying real estate for rental income may be out of the question, but perhaps you can start a website or even a coaching service. I did this myself. Besides podcasts and blogs, my website, christmasmoviescreenwriter.com, also has a membership section. Number 4, no expiration date. Yes, there is ageism in every industry, but luckily for writers, you can write a script at any age. What counts is not your looks, but how good your script is. But you need to be prepared for the long haul. Don't let rejection get to you. And make sure you live an interesting life. The more experiences you have, the more material you have to bring to the world as a writer. Well, that's the show. Thank you for listening. To show your support, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And sign up to be notified of the launch of our membership plan. This is where producers will post requests for tailored Christmas submissions, and writers can submit a written pitch. Sign up at www.christmasmoviescreenwriter.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next Christmas Movie Screenwriter podcast. Bye.